Hey everybody, you're watching Cole the Corn Star, and welcome to the 100% restoration and remodel of my great-great-grandfather's $7,000 mansion. We are currently in the middle of getting ready to build our footings and foundation walls for the underground movie theater, which is going to be located over here. But before we can get in here and pour this concrete, we need to finish all of the big work that we have in the existing basement. The biggest thing that we need to get done is we would like to remove these posts that come down in the middle of the room because they're ugly and they take up a lot of space. Now, the only way that we can remove these posts is if we take out this big wooden LVL beam and install a ginormous I-beam that goes from the back corner of the house over there all the way over here to the top of this concrete wall. Now, this concrete wall was poured in 1917, and it does not have the strength that we are looking for to support that big old I-beam. So today we are coming in and removing this wall, and then we will dig out the soil underneath. We will form up a footing, and then we will form up a little wall area. We will get everything rebarred up inside, so that way it'll be nice and strong. And then we will pour the concrete, so then we will be able to put our pole right here hidden inside of the wall to hold up our beam that will be located up in here. And then that will allow us to get rid of these ugly poles. We're about 10 minutes into ripping out this wall. Things seem to be going pretty well. Jackhammer is doing a phenomenal job, but I don't know what materials, concrete-wise, they made these walls out of years ago, but they are so hard. It is absolutely unbelievable. We did take a demolition saw earlier and cut some of these joints in, and we made it about halfway through the wall, but as you can see here, it split right on the joint, but we cannot get this thing to do anything. So we're trying a little bit different method now. So we have a concrete drill right here, a hammer drill. So we're gonna try to run some bits and then maybe see if we can make a few points in there, kind of weaken it up a little bit. And then, maybe drill, then take the jackhammer on the inside of it, and then maybe we'll be able to make cracks between our drill points and kind of have things break off a little bit easier. But these walls are tougher than an old boot. Now that we have our concrete wall all tore out and everything picked up, we are ready to tackle this little bit of soil here at the back, and then everything on the floor right here, we need to take it down about 10 more inches. We've been digging for about an hour now, and we got this little area dug down 10 inches. So we are going to end up taking rock, just like what we have over there, and bringing it into here. So the top of our rock is going to be somewhere where my hand is. We do have a little bit we need to dig out on this corner yet. It is kind of interesting digging over here in this corner because on the top, we have a really nice black fertile soil up top. In the middle, we have some clay. And then underneath of the clay, for whatever reason in this area, there is a sand pocket. This is literally like sandbox sand. It is soft and there is not a single rock in it. So it's just kind of amazing how much variability we have here. You just wouldn't think of there being literally beach sand just a few feet under the surface of the ground. We also were able to find our interior perimeter drain tile that comes around the entire perimeter of the basement. So we are going to end up connecting from right here into this corner and then over into that corner, and we'll get that all connected up before we get too wild in here with laying our rock. But this is our update. So we just got that little back piece left. For lunch today, we're firing up the grill and we are going to be having some pork steak. Now, if you've never had pork steak before, I guess this would be a much cheaper way of eating steak. Now, it tastes a little bit different because it's pork, but look at this. It is $2.69 a pound. We have a 1.3 pound steak right here, and we got some nice fat inside of it, so we should have some good moisture. This should taste pretty good. But it was $3.66 for this entire thing. So there's one for me, there's one for Roman. This one does have a bone in, so it might get a little extra flavor from this guy. Now, I've never cooked pork steaks on the grill like this before, so we're gonna try to keep them a little bit on the moisture side so that way they don't get too dry. But I think this could be a much more economical way of being able to eat some steak, or something that's gonna taste similar to a steak. Hey Roman, do you want yours well done?
No, just well done.
Okay, medium rare it is.
Well done.
Medium rare. I'm rocking an electric grill right now, but I'm kind of on a medium heat setting, so it's running somewhere about 200 degrees or so on there. And then I got it seasoned up with salt and pepper, so we'll leave these guys on here a few minutes, flip them once, leave them on a few more minutes, and see how they turn out. Now, I understand that everybody cooks their meat differently. Some people like to stick a thermometer in it. Some people can just look at it. I like going the feel approach. So if you take your fingers like this, and then this part of your thumb, right there, it kind of tells you how far it's done. So if you take your index finger and do that, the hardness of pushing on your thumb, that would be like medium rare. And then medium would be like with your middle finger, and then well done would be like with your ring finger. So that's literally the test I use on the meat, and it seems like it's pretty spot on. Here goes our first flip. Oh yeah. Whoop. Looking good.
Now that the digging part is done and we're waiting for Cole blessing us by cooking us lunch, I thought I'm gonna wait, and by waiting I mean I'm gonna bust this chimney out of here, and I think I have enough time to do that, so we'll do that real quick.
So it appears the steaks have turned out well. We still got to take our first bite to find out, but then we got a peach, a cucumber from Roman's garden, then we got some tomatoes from my uncle's garden, tomato juice, and then I guess cherry juice. You like cherry juice?
Any juice that has no sugar added.
Oh yeah, this one has no sugar added.
Cucumber.
Oh, look how juicy that thing is. Cooked right pork steak and seasoned well. I'd put that up there with a real steak.
Good job, Cole. Thank you.
Lunch is now over. While I was off cooking it, Roman got started tearing out this old chimney. So while we have the mess half started, we are just going to get this part done before we move on to the next thing. So we got a little bit on the side and we got a little bit on the bottom, and the bottom may be fun because there's a big chunk of concrete down there. After about 30 minutes of Roman running the jackhammer and me running my hands and the shovel, we got the old remnants of the chimney out. I take that back. We got just a little bit right here on this wall, but we are going to be ripping out this concrete at some point, so we figured no point messing with those right now, because when we rip out this wall, those little bricks are going to come out with it. Down here at the very bottom of the chimney, we found some interesting things. So years ago, their form of pouring a footing was just putting a bunch of rocks down in here. So we found a bunch that are like the size of watermelons. And when we break them open with the jackhammer, so these are the rocks right here, but when you break them open, the insides are incredibly interesting. This one in particular really highlights all what's going on. So we don't know if this is a type of limestone. That's kind of what we're guessing that it is. But if you get it in just the right light, it almost glistens in areas. And then there's like all these little nodules. And we don't know what that is. I'm kind of guessing that if this is limestone, maybe that's some calcium that when it got wet over time, since this rock is porous, that it expanded and it kind of crystallized a little bit and just made these rocks incredibly strong, because going at these things with a jackhammer was a job. And looking at a bunch of the rocks on the foundation wall, they are the exact same type of rock. So maybe that's one reason why our foundation is so strong. And some of these also I know are granite, and granite is incredibly strong. So maybe it's just the perfect combination of everything where we have super walls, because this basement is over 100 years old and there's not a single crack in the thing, and you run a jackhammer on it in a minute in one spot and you just break off a baby little chunk. So whatever they did back then, it was built to last. Now that we have this area all dug down and all of our dirt out of here and our chimney out, we are ready to address the concrete that we are going to pour today. So upon doing a little bit more thought, originally we were going to take our big I-beam going all the way from that back corner straight up through here to the new concrete that we were going to pour, which was going to be located right here. But looking at it a little bit more now, we kind of have a little change of plans. What we are going to end up doing now is taking a big beam going from right on top of this block wall up there all the way over to where the top of the ladder is located right here. And the reason why we are going to do that is because at the moment, right on top of this block wall, which we are wanting to remove, there is a giant beam that holds up all of the floors above us. So we really need to have this area supported. We think the best way to be able to support this area is by putting a big beam going across right here. So then that way this big beam upstairs will sit right on top of our big I-beam down here. When we have a big I-beam right here, that means that we don't need to run our I-beam all the way over to there now. We can simply just weld the two together right here. So our new big I-beam is going to go from here all the way to that corner instead of going from that corner all the way over to here. So since we are going to be putting in a beam going this direction now, we need to dig down a spot right here and get this formed up in rebar, so that way we can pour concrete, and then we can put a big post right here, so that way it will be able to bear the load of our new beam going across without worry of anything failing, which also means that we are not going to be pouring the concrete over here like we originally planned. We don't know the full dimensions of what we can build this footer to yet, because right over here somewhere we have a septic line, and then about right where my foot is we also have a septic line, and then over here we have the center footer to the house. So we're gonna have a few parameters that we need to kind of work around to make sure that we're not disturbing this stuff, but I think we're gonna have plenty of area to be able to build a really nice footer. I'm gonna let Roman finish digging the hole. We have an existing footer right beside the new one that we are digging, and we would like to be able to tie into that. So I'm gonna run down to the main heated shop where I think we have some supplies that we can use to be able to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main heated shop. So what we need down here, I believe they are located right here. So we are going to drill into the existing footing. So this part will go into that, and then we'll have this threaded area stick out into our new footer, and it should be able to bond the two together, or at least that's our theory. Yeah, you got some drumsticks too?
Yeah.
stiffs.
Yeah, I think that's a right size.
I have 4 of the bigger ones and then 9 of the smaller ones. So I figured that would be a good combination between all of them.
Good.
So if we take a look at the area that Roman dug, this is where our new footer is going to be located. There already is a footer underneath of this brick wall, and then when we poured the center section, we did pour a footer underneath of that. So our goal is to be able to try to tie this new footing to the old footings. And the way we're gonna do that is with these things that I just got. So the way they're made up, they have this little bell thing at the end of it. So you put that into the hole, and then we will end up taking the nut like the one that is on here. Once it's in, we'll tighten that down, and it pulls on this little thing right here, and it causes it to mushroom out and expand inside the hole. So then you can't pull it out. So now we have a piece that's sticking into the footer, and then when we pour concrete, all the concrete will get wrapped up in all of these threads, and then it should be able to have us connect all of these footings together. Now I'm gonna be fully transparent here. This is not the 100% correct way to do this, but since we have a septic line right here that we cannot move and a septic line on the other side of Roman that we cannot move, we really don't have a lot of choices here. So I just grabbed a whole bunch of them so that way we can put a bunch of them there. And to be completely honest, this footer by itself should be able to support all of the load that we are putting on it. This wall all by itself should be able to support the load that we are putting on it. And since we are going to be putting a pole on top of this new footer, and we are going to be putting our beam on top of this wall as well, so it's going to be sitting on top of our new beam and the old wall, we should be double strong, and we should be more than enough. We're just doing this as an extra preventative measure to try to be able to keep them locked together and have this last for 250 years. We just sort of figured doing this little extra step while we're already in there is absolutely not going to hurt anything. If anything, it will help tie them together a little bit. But to show why we're doing what we're doing, just imagine that this is the footer. Here, let me make a little flat spot right here so we kind of got something to work with. So imagine that this is the footer that is currently sitting underneath of the brick wall. So if we put a load straight on top of this, it can settle. And if this one is separate from it, which is the new footer that we are going to pour, that means that the other one could settle down and they're not working together with each other, or vice versa. Maybe this one settles down and then the old one stays where it's at. So that means we're not having equal pressures being put on them. But if we tie them together, it's basically going to act as one. So when we have force applied to it, everything moves at the exact same rate, and ideally, our weight is spread out enough where it doesn't move at all, which is what we want and which is what we should have, because the ground underneath the house has never been disturbed. So it should be nice and strong. And not only are we gonna try to tie the pieces together, but with the new footing that we are going to pour, we are going to be installing this rebar to help make sure the concrete is extra strong. So while I was off picking up the anchor bolts that Roman already has installed, see how they're nice and strong inside of there? Well, that one we accidentally drilled too big of a hole, but these other ones are nice and tight. There's 2 more over there. Roman was building this rebar structure while I was gone. So this thing's running on like 3-inch centers, and then we got 6-inch centers going sideways. So we are just taking these bricks right now and setting it underneath of our rebar structure, so that way we can make sure we get concrete under this. Now we just need to be careful and make sure that this rebar mat is in the bottom half of our concrete, and I'll explain why here in just a second. Because if it's too tall, then the rebar is not doing its full strengthening job like it's supposed to. For this example, I'm just going to use a piece of clay because I can actually break it with my hands, where if it was concrete, I would not be able to do this. But just imagine that this piece of clay is concrete. So let's say we have a load applied straight on top of our piece of concrete. That load is being transferred through straight down through the bottom. Now, if we have ample support underneath, we have incredible compression strength of the concrete, meaning we can put a lot of compressive force, and the concrete, it doesn't have any squish to it. So it's extremely strong that way. However, concrete is brittle. So if we have, let's say, a force right here in the middle, and it causes the concrete to break apart like that, because concrete is incredibly weak when it comes to this, That's where the rebar comes into play. So where rebar is strong is you can't pull it apart. It's super strong this way. So when we install our rebar in the bottom half of our concrete, that means that since we have this rebar inside of there that has all these little ridges on it that the concrete can connect to, now we have the compressive strength of concrete, so we can crush it a lot and it's not gonna do anything. And since we have the rebar in the bottom half, the area of the concrete that is trying to get pulled apart like this can't, because the rebar is in play. So that's why the rebar is so important, and that is how you can make concrete extra strong. And if I'm not mistaken, with this piece of rebar, if Roman grabs onto the other end and we both pulled, it would take 60,000 pounds of pressure for us to be able to pull this rebar apart. So when we have this in the concrete, that concrete is going nowhere, especially when we're only gonna have a couple thousand pounds actually sitting on top of this piece. And we have 4 pieces going across. So we should have 240,000 pounds of strength down there. Roman's gonna get the final touches done with that rebar, and I'm going to hop in the telehandler here, and I'm gonna get the concrete out of the heated shop, and then I'm gonna try to bring it down into the basement. I'll have to bring the cement mixer down as well, and then we should be ready to start pouring some concrete. Not the most stable. Maybe once I get the telehandler here, I can lean it against the telly. We'll give it a try. Take a look at this. I don't know how heavy the telehandler is, but we literally, we disturbed that right there, but we did not leave any sort of track right there. Okay, I take that back. It sunk in like maybe 1/4 of an inch, but right there, there is absolutely no track. So this is some solid stuff. I left my biggest track right here, which is where we have gravel underneath, but it looks like our backfill was maybe a little bit of some mud on top with it, so it wasn't the super strong stuff like what we have over there. But wow. Okay, let's pour some concrete. Oh, this thing may look like it's just some plastic and a little tube metal, but that motor on there gives it a little bit of heft. We're kind of fortunate that we are so close to a water source, because we need to add water to the concrete in order to mix it. And since we have our basement windows right here, I can just set the hose right in. Hey Roman, you wanna grab this hose? There we go. Now we don't have to fill things up with the 5-gallon bucket and carry it across the basement, which I am definitely for not doing. Mixing up that water. So with this concrete mixer that we have, we got a 3/4 horsepower motor on the bottom, and that spins this drum. So we already have our water inside of there. We learned that works best. And then Roman is going to bring 2 bags over. We can fit 2 bags inside of here. If we do more than that, then we have a really hard time mixing it up. So he's gonna dump his first one in right now. All the cement ingredients are in there to turn this into concrete here in just a second. So now once the dust clears out, it is actively mixing with all of that water inside of there, and it's gonna kind of turn it into a bit of a paste. And I'm trying to stay out of that dust because it kind of clogs up your nostrils, and then you basically have concrete in your nose if that gets in there. So right now we have a little bit of some watery concrete because we have too much water for our mixture. So this is where the second bag comes in. And once he puts that in there, we'll give it about 30 seconds. And then this should be about perfect.
I think it's a little bit dry.
A little dry?
Yeah.
Well, good thing we have the hose over here. Oh yeah, it's a little bit dry. We don't want it to look like dry soil, but we don't want it to look like slop either. So we're just gonna add a little bit of water inside of here. We want it just to be able to kind of flow nicely. Not too much, but not too little. Looks like it's starting to set up a little bit better now. Just gonna give it a little bit more water. About 10 seconds worth. It's always better to try to add a little bit more, because you can't really take it away. You can always add more concrete in to try to dry it back up a little bit, but sometimes that can be a pain. We need just a little bit more. I'm gonna turn it on a different setting here. There we go. Let that water be able to penetrate into there. We just want to be careful not to make our concrete too wet, because if it's too wet, all of the rocks that are in the inside making up the aggregate will sink down to the bottom, and then everything separates out, and then we get weak concrete. So kind of the drier the concrete, the stronger it is, but the drier the concrete, the harder it is to work with. So I think this is just a little bit dry. We're gonna add just a little bit more water in the next one. Then a tool that makes our job way easier is this thing. It's called a stinger. So there's some sort of vibrating apparatus up inside of here, and it vibrates the end kind of like a rattlesnake tail. So I'm gonna stick this down into the concrete. It's gonna vibrate, and it's gonna help get all the air bubbles out of the concrete and kind of mellow things out and make sure it gets into every little crack and crevice. So now what we got left here is a poured footer that is unfinished. Now this is going to be hidden underneath the concrete for the actual floor, so we are never going to see this again. This is purely a structural thing, so we don't really need to get it looking all that pretty. But while I'm down here, I am gonna clean this up a little bit right here, so that way we're working with just a little bit of a smoother edge. And then I'm also gonna trowel off the top, so that way we can basically, I don't know what they call it, but it kind of takes the little pores away on the top, and then maybe it just makes it a little bit better of a surface. I really don't know, but I just kind of like messing around with concrete, so that's what we're gonna do. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Take a nice look at that. It is currently bleeding out some water as it is slowly curing, but we have our footer poured. That thing is absolutely beautiful. I'm really happy with how that turned out. Wow. So now that we have this area all dug out, we have our chimney gone. We have a new plan in place for our up above beams. We got this all dug out and poured, and then we got all of our concrete tools cleaned up. I'd say that is a pretty good place to call it a day. So this is all we got for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.